Hello. Good morning. It's Thursday, March 13th. It's noon. Welcome. I'm happy to do this with you guys today. We're talking about accounting and also CEO stuff. But sorry, my background's weird. Just ignore the fact that it's a fake one. Everything's good. Yeah, if you're just joining me now, let me know where you guys are joining from. I'll give a few minutes to people to get here. I have, an hour-ish, but realistically, it could be less than that. We're looking at probably 45 minutes. If you have questions at any point today, you could put a comment in the thing on the left, wherever it is for you. I will try to answer them as I see them popping up. If you have, there's too many people talking for some reason, and you're scared you're not going to see them, you can also put an emoji in front of it so that I can see it better. I'm just trying to make sure my thing is going properly. Yeah, we're here. Okay, cool. So this live today is separated in two parts. For the first half, we're going to be talking about tricks to make your life easier as far as bookkeeping, accounting, and just general money management for businesses. The other thing that we're going to talk about in the second half is more of an intro about what I do, how I work, and what's fractional CEO and what I can do for your clients. It's not a sales pitch per se. It's more of like me talking about the general kind of profession, I guess. But if you do have specific questions about that, also feel free to do it. Plug them in here. I want to preface this by saying I'm not an accountant. I am a person who really likes numbers. If you have very specific questions that I might not be able to answer, I will happily refer you to someone else. But this is more of like these are the things I see a lot that are very kind of painful for a lot of the clients and startups that I work with. And they're often always the same. It's like people are in some way scared. Numbers are really intimidating for various reasons. And it's a thing that I used to be in that situation. I think when I had my startup 10 years ago, and I was really kind of in denial about how important that was. I just kind of had this box where I would shove all my invoices and kind of just send that away for the accountant to deal with. And I didn't really have the feedback loop of where I am, what I need to do for myself, as far as just like knowing, um, the numbers and controlling them. I'm just going to change my background because it's really bothering me. Sorry, it's like, yeah, whatever. This is better, I think. I'm in my shed, so I will just acknowledge that. Yeah. So let's get ahead and start with the first trick. So I think the first thing that is a less than 5 minute thing is to create an email for everything accounting. And for that, what I mean is what I said here. Create an accounting at domain name email. And every time you open an account anywhere, you put that email in there for the billing address so that all the invoices go to the same place. This way, you have everything in one place, even if you don't have like the next step, which is having a software do your accounting. You're still doing it in Excel. At the very least, everything is in one place. This is also helpful for you to not mistakenly delete emails from your inbox, or you've downloaded the attachment and you've put it in your QuickBooks, but somehow when you're doing the bookkeeping or your bookkeeper is contacting you with they're missing emails, missing invoices, everything will be there. The other thing that's really cool with that is you can sync that email with a lot of accounting softwares. So whether or not you're the one doing your accounting, you can have the emails and the attachments get from the email to QuickBooks or Xero or whatever other thing directly, which is kind of nice because then you can connect in your QuickBooks and simply go there and just process the invoices after that. Um, this is really convenient if you have someone else doing it for you, because then they could just log into that inbox specifically and not have access to anything else that you are working on, and then go through that. And also, like, just, I mean, from a legitimacy thing point of view, it makes you look more organized. If you have someone emailing from an accounting email to talk with another accountant, I feel like the that kind of really facilitates a lot of things. So yeah, it's a thing that's really worth it. Just having a separate box where you keep everything. If there's at any point something that I'm saying and you're like, you want to know more about that, feel free to just hop in the comments. I will happily expand on something that I said. We could also have a question section at the end. The number two, the second trick is knowing and owning your chart of accounts. I think the chart of accounts is a thing that, I mean, a lot of people don't even know what it is. I've had a lot of people not knowing what a P&L is, so I guess I'll start there. P&L is profit and losses. That's your year-end statement or month-end, or, I mean, you could make it for whatever period, but it's the thing that says, this is how much money I made, this is how much I spent, and this is what's left, right? In your P&L, there are some categories. So you would have revenue, and let's you spend your you look at the expenses only. You can have your rent, you can have your phone, you're gonna have the staff, and then office supplies and whatever other things, right? Those are categories. So the thing I see a lot in the way, I mean, there's often kind of basic templates when you create an account on QuickBooks, for example. They're going to have like basic categories, which are like subscriptions or marketing or whatever other things. And those buckets are kind of really wide. So a lot of things are going to end up in a bunch of different buckets. And it's not necessarily clear when you're just kind of bird eye view what's going in each bucket. What I mean by that is the subscription bucket, for example. You could have a subscription for LinkedIn, which is like a monthly payment. You could have Spotify in there. You could have your Shopify website fees, and the number of things that could be in there are really, you don't really know. You can't really have a specific understanding of where your money is going by looking at those really wide boxes. So what I try to do is have a chart of accounts that is very representative with titles that tell me what's in it. I'm not saying you should have one for every single expense, but instead of having a thing that called marketing, you could have paid ads, and then you could have, if you're doing SEO, you could have a bucket for SEO. And in SEO, you could have like the consultant that's doing your SEO, for example. I would try and steer away from having a bucket that's like all the consultants, you know? For me, I prefer having categories that are, so I would have one for accounting, for example. And in accounting, I'm going to put the fees for my employee who's doing the bookkeeping, but also the accountant and also QuickBook fees. So then I know that I spent, 5 grand on my accounting rather than I spent 10 grand on subscriptions that I don't know what they are or what or why they were useful. And that's it's a task that's kind of daunting. It's kind of intimidating if you've never done it. But I think it's the thing you could kind of start doing it. Like, a good exercise would be to just kind of ask yourself what that expense is for, and also have a good relationship with whoever is doing your bookkeeping. If you're the one doing it, it's a bit easier. If you have someone else doing it for you, getting them to understand how you want things. And most bookkeepers are pretty, like, they're, and I'm not talking about the general people, but I feel like there's like rules in accounting that you're doing things that way. And I found that generally, if I'm like, I want things a certain way, it's not really complicated for them to be like, cool, this is how we put them away for you. Um, so this is something you need to find a good bookkeeper, or just teach yourself how to do it. It's not really hard, but it could be time consuming depending on how many transactions you have in the grand scheme of things. And if it's really intimidating, a good first step might be just get someone else to do it. But don't delegate the fact that you still need to understand them. Delegating it to someone else is one thing because you need to have them done, but you still need to take some time to get it. Because if you just like completely in denial, it kind of defeats the purpose of having someone help you to begin with. There's a few people who are coming in. Philip, hello, how you doing? Um, and then there's David, who also sent us a smiley face. Welcome. Third category, as much as possible, put things on automatic payment. And I'm saying this with a, if you have cash flow issues, that might be tricky. Yes. And I'm going to acknowledge that right away. I've had, situations where a credit card, the credit card's full and the payments are going to bounce, but then they're going to start going automatically every time. So it's not like a huge deal because then your invoice is going to get paid some way or another. The thing that's fun about that is that it reduces the mental burden of getting an invoice and then having to stop what you're doing to go and pay the invoice. Which is kind of going to segue into my next point. But if you have that on automatic payment, auto pay on credit cards, especially if you have a good credit card that gives you a lot of points for things. I've heard of like use cases where people use corporate credit cards to pay for like their kids' schooling, just with like the rewards points. Because if you're processing, 50 to 100K a month on a credit card and you have 2% cash back on those, or like travel points and stuff, it could be really interesting to use those expenses for something else. But it's also a way to, be, I think companies appreciate getting, it's like a, paying people quickly is a thing that you could do that's easy. And it also just makes you a lot better at managing everything because this expense is going to come, it's going to be paid. You don't have to bother. Things that are, utility bills, phone bills, things that are kind of regular. And if it's like a all over the place invoice and you have problems with that supplier, maybe don't do that. But there are a lot of things that you could do that are kind of simplify that. The other trick, number 4, and that's like I have a couple of parts for that one. Weekly money dates. And then when I say 15 minutes, it could be 30, depending on the complexity. The point is, do it all at once. And if you have a bookkeeper, again, you have a, kind of power hour with that bookkeeper and you're like going through everything. Depending on some of the industries you're in, you might have to produce things for the government more often. I have a couple of people that I'm working with that are in the fashion industry, which makes you having to produce monthly tax declaration, which is kind of great for me because then you have to have your books up to date all the time. It's a lot of work, but it's also nice because you don't have to wait. I mean, companies sometimes wait, till the end of the year. And when you're trying to figure out what you did a year ago and what that invoice was, it's really hard to kind of keep up with it and just find the paper. And if you do find it, the invoice is half erased because the ink just kind of faded. So if you take that 15-minute, you're like, okay, these are the bills we have to pay. Just go through that. If everything's in QuickBooks, you could just go and click, click, click and pay them. That's the first thing. The second thing you can take those 15 minutes to do is bill clients. You could do it monthly. You could do it weekly, depending on the type of business you're in. For me, a lot of my clients are signed for longer-ish periods of time. So if I'm doing a contract for 6 months or 12, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the invoice, set a recurring invoice for the first every month because it's the same price every month. And then I'm just going to put it on automatic thing. So the client gets the invoice. I don't even have to sign into QuickBooks at all anymore. But for the clients that I do have to bill manually every month, then I have a report of all my hours. And then I just kind of copy paste the last invoice, change the number of hours and send it. And it's a thing that takes me literally 2 minutes. And I try to do it at very regular frequency just to make sure you don't miss. Because if you wait random times, then, I mean, some people fall into the crack. There's been times where I've had to chase suppliers for invoices for multiple months because we were trying to wrap a budget and we needed the invoices. Also, like, I mean, if you forget how to bill, it's kind of frustrating that you've put so much time to do the work and had, you know, forget to bill clients. Um, the third thing is to clean, I mean, if you have physical invoices in your wallet because you're going through places and using money or cards or traveling a lot, that might be a good thing to do. Try to do it right away. There's apps that you can sync with, I mean, QuickBooks and Dex or whatever you're using that you could literally take a photo and it's already in the accounting system. That's even better. But if you just take photos of everything and then send that to the accountant, that's also one way to do it. But it's just going to help you kind of get rid of that. Where is that paper? What was this for? I don't remember, kind of thing. And then you don't end up in, I mean, now, because for a lot of you, if you're doing, it's tax season now, so you might be really kind of up there with trying to figure out where those invoices are. And it's kind of, I mean, a bummer if you can't get the tax back on those because you don't have the receipts. How's it going so far? Do we have more questions? Just gonna check. Oh, Felix said hi. It's really not a big deal. You're late. You could watch on replay too at the end if you want. For the ones who didn't know, it's gonna stay on my LinkedIn forever. So, trick number 5: get rid of your money. And by get rid of your money, I mean put it somewhere else. For the ones who don't know, you don't pay for savings account. So the savings accounts are free for most banks, which means you could create as many savings accounts as you want. And I've heard recently someone told me that this is something that's been talked about in the book Profit First, which I haven't read yet, but it's something I've been doing for a really long time, which is setting up automatic transfers. I used to do that when I was employee as well, and I had like a regular paycheck. It's actually easy to do that because you know when the money's coming in. So if the money hits the bank account, it goes out to somewhere else right away. It's a lot easier to not spend it when it's not there, and you also get, you don't get to a point where you have to pay your tax at the end of the year and then you don't have the money. It requires a bit more discipline as far as cash flow is concerned. But I think doing that, or just at least, you could pay some of the taxes up front also. Um, I mean, the Canadian and the Quebec government do that. They have a platform online where you can kind of pay up front. So if you know based on the amount of money you made last year, this is how much you should pay this year. So you could prepay your taxes. But I was more thinking about, for me, I basically put my tax money aside already. So whenever I get paid from a client, I take a percentage of that money and then forward it to a different account. That money is actually sitting in a high interest savings rate, high interest savings account. So I get more interest on it than I would in a just like a normal savings account. And then when it comes to tax season, I can take that money and pay my stuff right away, and not have to kind of scramble to find the money. And I've had a couple of clients in the past or companies that I work with that had issues like this, especially if you don't have a payroll and you're paying, or a payroll system rather, and you're doing a lot of paying yourselves, and then you have to pay all of the, what's the OS in English? The government parts, for the salaries. So those checks can kind of hit you pretty hard if you get to a point where you've been paying employees, just kind of wiring money every month, and then at the end of the year the government's like, hey, by the way, you owe us 15, 20, 30 grand. So this is the kind of use case again. I mean, I would advise that you get a payroll system and then you don't have to deal with that because the money gets taken out every week. But this is another example of why it could be useful to do it. I said I had 3 tricks, by the way. I lied. I have 7. Don't think anyone's going to be upset about it. I'm going to go through the last 2, and then we can kind of take a little break, answer some questions if there are any, and then pass to the second section. So I already kind of touched about this one a bit earlier. Automate invoicing or get someone else to do it. So if you have any kind of if you're a freelancer and you work by yourself, that's a good place to start. If you have clients that are buying the same thing, as much as possible, you could create templates and kind of have your products that are created as well. You could create different type of products or services in QuickBooks and just kind of reduce the burden of having to invoice people to begin with. Just like the process of onboarding a new client, sending a contract, and all those things. Um, so if you could set it up recurring, like what I do in the case that I'm billing the same thing every month. But otherwise, to some extent, you can kind of have processes, and if you have an assistant, they can also do that for you, which is what I've been doing for a couple months now. And it kind of is a game changer because you get money coming in and you didn't do, I mean, you still did the work, but it's not the same kind of work. And you can kind of focus on where you're actually bringing more value. And then the last thing, which is the more daunting one and the thing that people don't want to hear, is to actually look at it. Um, look at your profit and loss statement, look at your balance sheet, and just try and get it. And by this I mean it's not rocket science. It's like you sold things. And what's fun about QuickBooks is you can click on all the things and it expands into showing you everything that's in every box. So um, I feel like especially with credit cards and stuff, when you have recurring payments and just like subscriptions, it can go really fast, and people don't necessarily realize all the things that are kind of going through. So if you have those, um, what I started doing is I basically pull out for all the companies that I work with. I pull out a monthly, um, and I basically compare the numbers. We could compare it to last year at the same month, but you could also compare all the months, right? So if there are some invoices, like some months, like you have a hydro bill every month, but then some months the hydro is not there. So then you can kind of see also like, well, this is supposed to be here. So do we have is the number that I'm seeing like the bottom line here? Do I make money? And if I am, is this number real? Um, and what I found is that just by asking the questions, um, and especially if you're getting someone else to do your bookkeeping and that person is not really privy to this operations and the specific of how your business is functioning, that might be interesting to have these conversations because you can put something somewhere, but then they don't understand what that kind of expense is, and then they're going to put it somewhere else. And that can affect kind of significantly, if you made money or not. There is a question that just came in that's kind of interesting. Irene. Hi, Irene. Long time no speak. What accounting system do you recommend? And that would be the best for cheapest for self-employed status. Um, I think QuickBooks is kind of my go-to because I like it a lot. I think there's like a learning curve, and I'm saying this with asterisks. I don't think it's like a really big learning curve. I think the biggest thing about there's like a zero that is pretty much the same, but some people have told me that it's easier to learn. I don't like it as much. I think especially QuickBooks, they have like really aggressive discounts, so like multiple times a year. I know like their Black Friday discount was like 75% off for 6 months or something. Which is when you think about it, I think it's 50, it's like $25 a month or something for the entry level. The second plan, they have like four different pricing. I think the second one is usually the one I get for all people because you can have the syncing your email and putting in all your expense in that section, which is to me the thing that has the most value. It's really rare that I've needed the most expensive ones, and I don't usually get the payroll from QuickBooks. So if you get the really aggressive discounts, at worst you're paying like something like $50 a month. But if you do the math on the amount of time that you're saving versus doing it in QuickBooks, it's like a non-issue. It's really easy. Um, I know people who do it on Excel, and the biggest thing that I would tell you to think about when you're trying to make that decision is how many transactions do you have? If you're billing, 1 to 3 clients every month, you have one invoice and no expenses because it's basically just like your time, um, it might not be worth it. But if you're going on business trips, you have a lot of like invoices, you're working with subcontractors, and there are like subscriptions to things, it could kind of go really fast, especially if you're looking at your tax, like sales tax declarations, just processing all those invoices and keeping track of that. That could go really quick. So that's usually why I recommend to everybody to kind of, I've rarely met a client that I wasn't convinced that they would need an accounting software. Um, and I'm happy to talk about your specifics if you have more questions about it. But yeah, so I think the biggest thing here is really just kind of taking some time to understand it. And it's a thing that oh, thank you, Philip. Exactly what I was saying. They have a discount, 75% off for 8 months. And again, once you're on the software, it's pretty rare that you would kind of, unless you absolutely hate it with a passion, that you would decide to switch. QuickBooks is really wildly used. There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of softwares that integrate with it also, which is something that you need to take into account. If you're going to go with some kind of foreign software that no one knows, it might be harder to find a bookkeeper to help you with it as well, versus like QuickBooks where everyone knows. But yeah, get it is a thing that you need to take the time to look at it. And there's no other way. Like I've done it because I got to a point where I understood that that was kind of my weakness, I guess. And then I realized I really liked it, and now I kind of became obsessed over it. Not saying that's what's going to happen to you, but it's worth if you're able to have a conversation with an accountant and understand what they're telling you. That's kind of like the basic level you need to have. Just understanding what they're telling you rather than just taking whatever they're telling you for, you know, and then doing those. It's best that you be able to position to make your own decisions rather than just kind of trusting someone else's judgment who doesn't understand your business and your specific needs. If that makes any sense. If you can find a client or an accountant or a bookkeeper that does, that's even better. But we don't always, yeah, they don't always get those industry specific things. And not that it's not it doesn't make them a bad accountant either. I've had really good accountants, and if you have someone that you trust, that's the best, honestly. Are there any other questions about the tricks or anything related while we're there? If I was gonna say, so I'm gonna hop into I'm just gonna present. Give me a second to set up my screen. If you have a, I mean, the second section is me talking about tricks and stuff. So if that's something that's interesting to you, that's you welcome to stay. But if you want to go because you don't really care about what a CEO is, that's perfectly fine too. Just gonna make this full screen. Again, not a sales pitch, more of like a day in the life kind of, this is how it works, and how that might work if you need help or are interested in the profession, or if you're just kind of curious to see what that is. So basically this was meant to be more of like yeah, I get asked a lot what a fractional CEO does, and I figured I was going to talk about it because then people would understand, and you know, eventually that could lead to me getting more contracts. But really the point is kind of, I think everybody understands what a fractional CFO is and why it works, but there's this kind of notion that operations are this full-time thing and operations are really overwhelming. And I mean, operations in themselves are this kind of big Pandora box that some people don't understand. I find that when I work with clients, a lot of the time I'm in this position where I get to work at the intersection of sales, finance, and operation. So I'm not necessarily a full-time salesman. I do work on a lot of strategy for a lot of projects. Um, but I also happen to work on finances as well. depending on what the clients need, really. Um, I'm not a consultant. I mean, I think consulting is kind of a way to sell yourself rather than a mentality. For me, it's not, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with consultants in that regard, but for me, I'm not someone who's going to come and tell you this is your problem and how to fix it. I'm going to fix the problem. And that's really the distinction. It's not because I'm outside of the team that I'm not working for the team. Um, and I think there's this kind of sometimes people would have a concern that because you're not, you don't have equity or you're not full time or you don't have a salary, it doesn't matter, but it does. The point for me is to kind of bring in this expertise and also not suffocate the business by adding another salary. And if I don't need to be there full time, which is kind of always the goal, right? If I'm going to come in and I mean, I kind of thrive to say I'm going to come in and fix things and then not need to be there eventually. Um, I always find other things to do, but the goal is to make myself useless. So I'm trying to build sustainable systems that can thrive without me and also take a task and make sure that the person's doing that thing is the right person to do that. I'm not a project manager either. I'm not going to come in and just kind of catch a bunch of random balls. I kind of see myself more as a um, leadership level where I'm kind of coming in as a second in command sometimes, depending on the structure of the team. And basically, I'm going to work to set up clarity and just kind of goals and say, okay, this is where we're going and how we're going to get there. That's the second step. For me, oh, my thing is kind of, it's annoying, but it's like having a second brain. So I come in and I relieve some CEOs of the pressure of working by themselves. I often work with solo founders. And so for me, it's like I bring in that expertise and that I've been there. I understand what it's like to be an entrepreneur. A lot of employees are employees, and that's completely fine. But sometimes it could be really lonely if you're at the head of a company and um, you don't have anybody who can kind of hear you. So I come in, I'm a CEO. I'm just not there full time. I'm always available. As in, like, if you text me, I usually respond within, a couple of hours, but I'm not going to work full time. And I'm trying to make it so I don't need to be there full time as well. And I'm a one person, but I come in with an expertise and I have different people working with me. So I also bring additional expertise to the table. If there's a situation where someone needs to have, a very specific expertise that I don't have, then I will go get that so that my client can benefit. Um, it might be for you, and by this I mean not necessarily you should hire me, but you might want to look into getting help. Um, if you're in a position where you do everything, you're often the bottleneck for your own company. And if you don't have a clear plan, or you have a plan but you don't know how to execute to get there, infinite to-do lists are very common. Feeling if you're overwhelmed, and if you don't feel like you're doing what you want to be doing, if you're doing a bunch of tasks that are not the ones that are exciting you, you started a company because you are really good at I don't know, drawing houses because you're an architect, and you end up managing payroll and running meetings and you're not actually architecting anymore. That could be a use case. I've seen a lot of people who are kind of building this company because they have an expertise, and then you become a manager and you realize you really wanted to be doing that thing the whole time. So you need a business person to handle the business stuff so you can go back to doing that. That's another kind of frequent use case. And you might not need a fractional CEO, which is good, I guess. If you get to a point where you can work independently, you can leave and things run because you have solid employees who can run things while you're not there. You have good processes that make sure that, balls are not getting dropped. If you don't pay yourself a salary because you can't afford to, I mean, it's not that I can't help. I think I can definitely help. And I do work with some companies to some extent when the CEOs are in this condition, but I think it might be hard if you don't have money to afford it to find like room to get more people in the team in some cases. Um, if you don't have time and you can't commit a couple of hours here and there to brief someone and to kind of give them the direction and the sense of these are the tools that you need. This is like kind of for me to start working in a company, I need to understand what the direction is. And sometimes I'm going to take a couple of hours with the CEO and be like, okay, tell me everything and meet all the employees and have that kind of feedback loop going. So if I can't get the time or FaceTime with the CEO, it might be hard to do that. And in some cases, it's just not really making sense. My clients are kind of, I want to say SMB is probably what kind of qualifies the most. Um, I found that the sweet spot as far as like return on investment and also just the general size of the companies that I'm having the most fun working with are companies that are like between 3 and 10 employees that have like a small team that are around the 500 to $2 million mark, and most likely, most often are solo founders. I'm not working exclusively with solo founders. I've also worked with teams, but I find that those are the ones that have the problems that I'm kind of coming in to fix the most. Um, I'm saying startups, SMBs. I mean, for me, they're all the same. As much as if you define startups by being a VC money company, I think that the definition of startup is pretty loose nowadays. I've worked with agencies as well. The model is a bit different, whether you sell a service or a product, B2B, B2C. I've done both. I have a preference. I think I have more expertise with the B2B side of things, but I also really enjoy the complex logistics that are behind a B2C company. Here's an example of a client that I work with, Tommy from ScaleQuest. He has a company to do they offer cold calling services. And we worked on project together because he was at this point where he's offering a service. He has a lot of different kind of processes. He has a lot of different clients running at the same time. And he's doing most of the biz dev for his own company. He's doing all of the discovery meetings, but he also has to structure and run the projects. And there was an issue as far as like his time management, and he needed to kind of structure processes so he could scale better. So what I started doing, the first thing I did was to do a lot of phone calls. I basically came into a employee position where I just kind of executed projects for him to understand what the reality is as an employee, what it's like to call for ScaleQuest and sell ScaleQuest, and what it's like to call for the clients that are hiring ScaleQuest. So I had different experience. And then from there, we were able to kind of set up a plan and say, okay, we're going to go from running everything into Excel, setting up a CRM. We revised all the pricing and what the plans were including and what the offer was, mapping out all the internal sales processes, and then where's my mouse? I'm sorry. I just want to move this because I can't see my sign. And then also setting up automations so that reminders and stuff could be automated and then basically ultimately reduce his workload as far as like managing his sales pipeline was concerned, so that he could focus on where he had the most value. I usually work in phases. It's not like a really structured process where I'm going to spend a couple months doing an audit, but I think doing an audit is the first important task for me, where I kind of come in, ask a bunch of questions, read all the documentation that I can find, and like meet a lot of key employees. And that usually helps me get a better understanding of what the situation is, because I found often I meet the CEO tells me this is what the issues are and the version of their version of events. And then I meet employees and I get often a complete different picture. And what's also really interesting is that the employees don't see me as their boss. So often they are a lot more comfortable talking to me about what's really happening in their company, what's limiting them as far as like being able to do their job properly, what they would like. So that's often very, very um, rich and meaningful conversations because I get to learn a lot about the company that way. And then from there, I can kind of set up a plan based on, again, overall vision, where we want to go. Um, these are the main problems and how we can execute on this solution. So these are all things that are happening rather quickly, depending on um, how severe the problems are, and the solution for those problems. The implementation might be longer, but it's kind of, again, sometimes there's like quick fix that we could solve in 2 weeks, and some other things that we're going to be working on because we require to change completely the way the company function at its core. And I've done both. I am currently working on a project with a client that requires to change completely the inventory management system, which is a big task. So longer project, but we're working together for long term. So it's something that makes sense. I typically work on projects in 2 ways. I either do a narrow focus, small project. Client approaches me and like, hey, we need help with this thing. And then we're going to say, okay, cool, this is a deliverable. This is how fast I can deliver on this thing. The price is going to be this much. Or what's the most common thing is we do retainer where I'm going to come in, we're going to work together for 6 months, and the goal is an overarching goal that's not a clear deliverable, like we need a new forecast for the sales or something, where it's more like we have issues with this, we have issue with that, and then we're going to work to get these things. Sometimes my scope of work is offloading the CEO, and it could literally be just as simple as that. The how comes afterwards once I start talking to people. But this is pretty much the realm of where I sit. Yeah, I've kind of gone through that a bit quick, but I, you know, again, this was not meant to be a pitch as much as a kind of, this is how I work, and also kind of giving you a bit more info. I think if there are questions, by the way, please feel free to ask. It's a 12:45 now, so we have about 15 minutes left. If you guys want to go back to your day, that's completely fine. Thanks for joining. If there are a few questions, I'm happy to take some time here. I can expand just a little bit for a minute. I want to say I find that my role varies in different companies. So sometimes I'm going to kind of work more in a almost CEO position, CEO where it's more operations, but sometimes it's more CFO, where I come into a project and we're doing the end of year and I'm doing, grant submissions, and I'm pretty versatile in that sense. But I think at the end of the day, it's like what needs to be done, and then kind of finding the right people. And sometimes the right people is not me. And it's perfectly okay. But the point is, we want to get the company from there to here. Philip, Nicolas says, thank you. Thank you for being there, Nick. Happy to see you. We did a great live together. If you guys don't know Nick, where we talked about a lot of mental health and just like the reality of being in business. How do you measure ROI of your services? It's not like it's not as clear cut as doing, hey, spend $1,000 on this and you can make $5,000 in sales. In some cases, I do sales, which is in those cases a bit easier. I think for me, it's more in terms of time save, and also just like we're increasing operational capacity. So in a lot of cases, there's always issues. It's like if we do more sales, everything is going to bust because we don't have the operational capacity to deliver on those sales, or we can deliver, but we can't make the sales happen. So I'm basically kind of lifting up everybody. And I feel like a thing that happens a lot that I've seen is there's this kind of relief where people are like, oh, help is on the way. Things are going to get better. And that's like harder to measure. It's kind of a moral kind of thing. Like someone told me yesterday where I was meeting new employees of a client I'm starting to work with. And one person was like, oh, it's like having a therapist. It's finally someone I can talk to. So I think in a way I make people feel seen and heard, and that's super valuable also. Um, in some cases, the CEOs are not always, not that they're not there, but there's always a lot of stuff going on. And so some of the employees who are like kind of lower in the company structure might not have a lot of face time. And I kind of bring that in a way. So yeah, I don't know the clear return on investment. I think it's worth a lot for a lot of companies. I don't know. I wouldn't know how to put a price tag on that. There's Tama, who is here, said thank you. Thank you for being here, Tama. I will send you the thing I said I was going to send you, by the way. I didn't forget. Yeah, are there any other questions? This has been pretty cool. I appreciate you guys being there and asking questions. Maybe I'll stay around for a couple more minutes. If you guys have other questions that you want to ask privately, or just like have advice on what we were talking about earlier, your the tricks for the accounting and how to make that easier without wanting to share publicly, then I'm happy to hop on a call and just kind of like discuss your specific needs if that's something that you need. And again, this is not like I'm not going to charge anybody for this. This is more like just happy to expand on what we discussed. If you have questions, and I know it's like a really daunting thing. I find myself talking to a lot of entrepreneurs who are kind of just like, this is a thing that I need to do, but I don't really want to. I don't enjoy it particularly either. And if that's you and you just want someone to talk to someone who doesn't mind it, I'm happy to do that, especially now that it's tax season. If you're kind of having to catch up and just want to not be late on those deadline. We have 2 weeks, I think, right? So was it April 1st or April? Oh no, it's April 30th. We have 6 weeks to do our taxes, but regardless, cool. On this note, thanks for being here. If you have other questions, my email is right here. You can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily as well. And yeah, I'll see you on the other side. Thank you for coming, guys. Have a good day.